Hello, my name is Ben, and today I'm going to show you how I make Viperweave. How I start it and how I end it. This is how it lays. It lays pretty nice. It's a beautiful pattern. And what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be closing up two rings, making two closed rings there. Then I take the open ring, put two closed on it. Okay, then we put our basic pattern here with the right ring laying over top of the left one, the middle ring being on the bottom there on the side that we're going to be working with. Right ring being over the left. And put some tape on that side there. The Rain's tutorial that I saw on mailartisans.org showed how to do that. I was having trouble getting the tape to stay, so what I use is I use bobby pins. I put the ridges on the side that I'm going to be using as a top, putting 3 bobby pins on here so that way the tape will hold better. Had a little trouble with this particular bobby pin, but it'll work. Okay, then I lay it down the way that I'm going to be working with it. I'm going to take some tape. Going to lay the tape down. Going to take the rings and lay them the way that I'm going to be working with it. Putting the middle ring with the middle ring on the bottom there. Making sure that the right ring is on the top, even though it doesn't really matter too much on this, but it helps visualize the pattern. Sometimes putting the tape on can be a little difficult. It takes a little practice. Even then, it still can be a little difficult here. I have an extra hole in the middle. We're just going to ignore that particular hole. So now the right ring is over the left, the middle is there. I'm going to point out the holes here. You have number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. The middle one there is the 5th hole. We are ignoring that hole. Okay. So I'm going to put the first ring through number 2 hole, and then up through number 4. So you can see how it sits in there. Close that ring. I have a bunch of open rings here because I find it easier to use the open rings than to open them later while I'm working. So now I put the open ring through number 1 and then up through number 3, making sure that we do not go through the ring that we just put in. Sometimes it's a little difficult. Later on I'll show you a trick on how I puts that in. Okay, so now we have the 2 rings there that are going through the 3. Now we are going to be putting in this ring through the 2 rings that we just put in, through number 1 hole and number 3 hole. Up through 1 and down through 3. You can see how it sits in there. Okay, so now we're going to take a single ring. We're going to be putting it through the 3 rings that we just put in. There's only one spot for that. It can go through all 3. You see how that's going through all 3 rings there? We're going to be taking another ring and we're going to be putting it in the exact same 3 spots through the 3 rings. Okay, and you can see how the right ring is laying over the left. And we're going to turn the work over, and we have the 4 holes that we started out with originally. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So again, we're going to be going down through 2, going up through 4, take a little extra time with there. I didn't really need to do that for this tutorial. Now I'm going to be going through number 1 and number 3. You see how the rings are laying there. You have these 2 rings that's going through number 1 and number 3, but it's a little easier to put the ring through, making sure not to go through the ring that we just put in, which is this ring. Now we're closing that ring. And we turn it over, we're at the top part of it now. We spread apart the rings that we have, and now we're going to be putting the ring through the 2 that we just put in. On the reins pattern, those 2 rings would be gold. Okay, now again we're going to be putting in through the 3 rings. It gets a little faster at this point because it keeps the pattern better. So we're going to be putting in the 2nd ring through the 3. And we turn it over, putting the right ring over the left. I usually try to keep that way so that way it'll keep the pattern better. It doesn't always stay there. Now we're going through number 2 and up through number 4 hole. Okay, you can see, okay, number 1 hole there, number 4, and then we're going through number 3 though. Make sure we don't go through the ring that's already there. Spread it apart. You see how those rings go. Has those 2 rings that come up. So going through hole number 1, hole number 3. Okay, so that ring right there holds the pattern. Between the 2 rings that go up, there are 5 rings. This is the first ring, number 1, going through 3 holes, going through 3 rings, rather. Again, number 2 goes through the same 3 rings there. And we turn it over. Going through hole number 2. And up through hole number 4, that's number 3 ring. Number 4 ring is going through number 1 hole, number 3 hole. Spread those apart, turn it over so that we have the top side there. Have 2 rings there that we're going through number 1 and number 3 hole. That is the 5th ring. And this right here is about 1 inch. You see how it's laying there about with the 1 inch. Now what I usually do is I usually leave this on until I've finished. You can see on this one that I have not yet finished, it's still on there. This one's about 8 inches. I'm going to be making this a little bit longer. But I leave that on there so that way it's easier to work with. So take off the tape, take off the bobby pins. And I take off the 2 edge rings there because it just doesn't lay right in my opinion. So I take those 2 edge rings off. Makes it easier to work with at the beginning. And you can see that it is laying pretty well. I put a clasp on one end, usually it's a lobster claw, and you can see how it lays there a little better. I'm going to be making more tutorials as I can. Feel free to leave comments, suggestions, whatever for this. I'm going to be posting the link for Lorraine's tutorial from mailartisans.org. I thank you for watching and have fun.